And we are live. Yes, yes, yes. Everyone, my name is Diamond Rivera of Diamond Rivera Films. And today we have two very, very special guests by the name of Ciara Morales and Raven Sutton.
Hello,
As
everyone.
as well, we have Monica. And we also have Candace who will be joining us, and they will be the sign language interpreters for this discussion. So I thank you all once again for joining me tonight as an audience, but also the guest here. I really thank you so much for being a part of this.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. And we know during these times and COVID-19 and with quarantine that a lot of people are at home and everyone deserves a good story. And for me, knowing Ciara's journey, but also learning of Raven's journey throughout the years with our dance community, I felt it was very imperative to understand both because as I had spoken to Ciara, she also let me know about how Raven's story was just as important and their connection through dance was something that not everyone is capable of having. I believe that with dance, it brings many people together, and it's very important that we realize no matter the capabilities or accessibilities, we all are one. And it's very important that we can understand how dance, the both of you met, how dance has changed your life, and also the challenges that had arisen and lie ahead. So for me, I would love to start with Raven sharing her story through her journey of dance and even leading up to meeting Ciara.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here. Hello to everyone. Again, my name is Raven. I'm from Alabama, born and raised. I was born deaf. I remember growing up as a deaf child that I found dance to be something that I really fell in love with, and it was a great way for me to express myself. I remember since I was one that I was moving. And my family always encouraged me to dance as well. We danced together. And there was music always in my life. Dancing was always a part of my life. I, even through high school, I danced quite a bit. I love freestyle dancing, so many different genres. I love Latino dancing, bachata, salsa, hip hop, really everything to move my body and to express myself through my body. And then when I decided to go to college, that was the first time I joined a dance team. Before that, I had danced by myself. In college, I was able to join a dance team. I joined two teams. Bisons with Attitude is one of the teams that I was a part of, and the Gallaudet Dance Company for Gallaudet University. Bisons with Attitude is primarily hip hop. That's usually what we do. And the Gallaudet Dance Company is really a mixture of different kinds of genres. We do jazz, modern dance, ballet, hip hop, kind of like a mix of everything. I remember through that experience how much I grew as a dancer. And I was surrounded by deaf dancers because Gallaudet University has deaf students. I remember that I went to Haiti, to Port-au-Prince. And what I did there was taught deaf students how to dance there. At that time, I did a hip hop choreography with them. And it was for 2 summers in a row that I was able to go. And the purpose of it was to create collaboration in the community between the deaf and hearing community. I was teaching the choreography to them. And then at the end of the camp being done, they would put on a show for their parents and families and friends who lived in the area. So that was a really nice way to show how important deaf people could contribute, how what deaf people could contribute to dance, and who many deaf dancers that are overlooked actually, or people might doubt that they can even dance or are able to because of being deaf. So it was a nice way to expose the community to bring bridging those two worlds. And my experience in Haiti, I hold it close to my heart. So when I was in college at Gallaudet University in DC, and it's that really is where I fell in love with the Latino dance community. I had danced with friends and family growing up, but never in the way that I did once I was living in DC and going out in when I was there at Gallaudet or in the DMV area, the different areas where you can dance here. I really fell in love with it. I couldn't do it enough. It's been a great experience for me. I've met so many wonderful people. I joined the Ferocity Dance Company. Um, and that's Kat Arias's dance company, and I joined the lady team. There are many dance clubs in our area, thank goodness, and so I have so many that I love to go. Of course, I have to give a shout out to Bachata Brunch on Sundays because it's such an important event for me. I remember going there. I would go and I would go by myself, and usually I would notice that I was kind of like the only deaf person that would go, and it was just something I was used to, and so I remember I was going and I caught a group of people that were signing there. And of course, I noticed them immediately. I was like, what is this? More deaf folks are coming to this bachata brunch. And so when I went over there, I knew I had to introduce myself. And there were actually other people with Ciara that were there. And so we got to know each other. We became friends on the dance floor. And then I found out she was an interpreter. I couldn't believe it. I said, how could this be? You have to be my best friend. What is going on? Ciara's laughing. So it's really been that. We've been in love ever since. It's been since 2017. She's my best friend. We always dance together and love working together.
Absolutely. With knowing that you dance for Ferocity and knowing Kat and knowing many people from her team, I love the inclusion of people from the deaf community in our dance scene because a lot of times people have misconceptions and not being inclusive is harmful. So I definitely give a super shout out to Kat and the Ferocity team out there in DC. And my question for you, Raven, is when you were dancing socially with people, were there a lot of questions at first, or was it more of you introducing yourself to others?
When I go out dancing, I don't announce and say, hey, deaf girl over here.
Hmm.
That's not usually how it starts. I'm already there. I'm dancing because I love dance. I'm at that place because I love dance. So I don't really start with I'm deaf. What will typically happen is someone will ask me to dance. And so I'll, go out and dance with them. And then after the dance, they may want to try to have a conversation with me. And that's kind of where they find out, right? I may mention I'm deaf. And that's where all the questions start, right? That's, but I just danced with you. How can that be? I don't understand. How did you hear the music? What happened? You're lying. You have to be lying. There's no way that you could be deaf. How did you know? How could you have followed the music? And so then I have to start my spiel, right? My explanation
Hmm.
about how deaf people can dance, and it's just something we can do. And so inevitably, I have to have that conversation. Sometimes other people will see me with Ciara, we'll be together, and we'll be signing, right? So then people already know before we start dancing that if I'm signing, it's probably because of that. So they may also experience a little bit of hesitance to come up to me and ask me to dance because they may feel awkward, like they don't know how to ask me, they don't know what to do. I can't communicate with you because you're deaf and I'm not. And really, I mean, if you're going out dancing, it's about dance, right? It's not about the fact that I'm deaf, right? It's about wanting to go out and enjoy yourself and express yourself in dance. And so sometimes I'll get a person who sees me dancing and then afterwards find out that I'm deaf. And I guess they become so shocked or amazed by it that they may ask other people to come and dance with me first, right? So they might say, "Go, take her out and see what how that works," and then I'll
Mm,
watch, and then later maybe I can ask. And so that kind of tokenizes me, right, in some ways, and so that's not so great. I feel like people really need to, we're just dancers, right? I'm a dancer, you're a dancer. Isn't I think it's crazy to think that you would change anything that you're doing or not know what to do with yourself if you want to dance with me. They do always have questions that I have to answer often. Now, since I've been in the DMV area dancing since 2017, then most local people already know me, and so I've kind of already, I know most of the community. I dance with. I know who I dance with, and so I don't get all those beginning questions that I used to get 3 years ago. And I am in the dance team, and so all of that has contributed to getting less questions. Let's say, oh, and some questions I just ignore, but it does happen all the time. Yeah.
absolutely. And another question I do have for you, Raven, is with you entering into this dance scene and now performing, have you been able to meet other dancers who are part of the deaf community?
Most of the deaf dancers that I know, a lot of the times they come because they know me, right? So I've
Mhm.
invited them. There are many deaf dancers at Gallaudet University, many. There's so many that I've met over the years that I've been here, friends with me, and they see me dancing. They want to learn. They want to specialize in Latino dancing or anything like that. So I invite them always with me. So I am forever showing up with a new person, a new deaf person at events. I always bring them with me. So that's and Ciara too. Ciara brings her deaf friends as well. She invites them to events, and so yeah, I always have my deaf friends with me wherever I go dance. Sometimes I know there was a time where I went to a congress, and it did happen that I did meet a deaf dancer at the congress that I did not know already.
Mm.
And that deaf person I ended up being in the same class, and so they couldn't believe that I was deaf. I couldn't believe they was deaf. It was great. And then we didn't even know there was an interpreter there, so that was just so cool to connect with another deaf person at an event like that. Even to have access at a congress really is a big deal for me. It's not something that happens every day as a deaf dancer. And so people who can hear can go to any event, right? And they never have to worry about access. So typically, if I go to an event, I've already checked if there's an interpreter, or I've already asked a friend to go and interpret for me. So I've already set that up. So for me to go and there to be an interpreter there is a big deal. And the interpreters that I work with, or the friends of mine that come and interpret for me, they really love dance too. And so sometimes what will happen is I'll go to an event and maybe I'll have the interpreter just for the event, but not so much for the social part. And so all of these factors play a role in all of that. And so, yeah, so when I see more deaf people involved and more interpreters involved in dance, it makes me so happy. It really does great things for me. And to see people out there caring about it, like this, for example, it all means a lot.
I definitely appreciate it. And at least right before we get to Ciara being able to share her story, I do want you all to know, but also the audience to know, is that periodically we'll show some examples of comments people leave right under. Like we have from Edwin, we have some from Jessica, we have even from Kat. So, you
Oh,
know,
hi, Kat.
periodically throughout the interview, I'll just give those little shout outs out. And, you know, I really do appreciate, Raven, you giving us a brief history of yourself. And once we get into Ciara's story, we will also notice how you guys have really come together to provide more awareness within the deaf community. So, I mean, at this time, I'd love now for Ciara to definitely share her story from her beginnings, and to where it's led her, and her joining forces with Raven.
And we're going to switch interpreters as well.
Absolutely.
All right, so you already know who I am. So I'll just repeat my name for everybody. My name is Ciara. My sign name is like curly hair coming down the side. And really, dance in general has been a part of my life since forever. My family dances together. We've always been heavily involved in music. And, when I was a young girl, I would watch my parents dance salsa, and I just enjoyed it. I loved it. I grew up doing that. So I thought when I was a child that when I grow up, that's what I want to do. I want to dance, and it will be a part of my future. No questions asked. However, I never thought that this would happen or that it would come to fruition like this. And it's been a shocking experience for me. I grew up dancing in high school. I was always dancing. I was competing if I could, just very involved. I wanted to be in everything, and every opportunity that presented itself. So now that I'm an adult, things are starting to make sense. I'm still a dancer, and I'm still very involved. When I went to college, I took a dive even further into the dance community. And in 2010, I graduated and I moved to New York. So understand that I did not have any plans to become an interpreter when I got there. However, I was studying Reuben studies first, Reuben studies, excuse me, urban studies. Thank you. I was majoring in urban studies, and I was minoring in psychology. And my major, urban studies, was very close to home. And the loss in my family really had an impact on me at that time. And so I decided to discontinue my major and pick up ASL classes. And I thought it was something that could be fun, something that I can enjoy. However, I fell in love instantly. And I knew that this was something that I wanted to be involved in forever as well. I had already studied things growing up, and I didn't have enough money to complete school. So I knew that I wasn't going to be able to afford the rest of my education in that major. So let me back up for a second. I want to clarify. I wanted to dance growing up, but I knew that the major was going to be a struggle for me because I wasn't able to afford it at the time. So I decided I wanted to take a major that I knew that I would be able to earn a living after graduation, as well as something that I would love for the duration of my life. And so I really valued the communities that I was involved in. I wasn't able to complete my initial choice, but I knew that I would be able to do this next step. And so I went away and I transitioned to another college to start my career as an interpreter. And that was in 2012. I believe I moved to Chicago. So in Chicago, I went to Columbia College, or Columbia Community College, excuse me. Sorry, Columbia College. I was right the first time. So anyway, I moved away to Chicago, and I thought I was going to stay there for forever. But that was a lie. So I got my degree in Chicago. And at the same time, I felt like something was missing. I wasn't dancing anymore. And at that point, I decided I needed to dance. I really wanted to dance. So I met a friend who really encouraged me to major in dance. And I decided, why not? Why not? So at the point in Chicago, I changed my minor to dance. And I figured that would be something fun. And that decision changed my life. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to complete my minor due to financial reasons. But I was able to start a journey in both things that I had a passion about and a passion for. And at that point, I kept going. Upon graduation, I met so many wonderful people, took amazing classes, and really delved into the dance community as well as the deaf community. And it was at that moment that I realized I do want both in my life for the rest of my life. So after college, I joined a few teams. Excuse me, during college, I joined a few teams. I joined Zeke. Do you guys know of Zeke?
Zeke from Chicago. Yes.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I joined his team a while ago. Um, I wasn't heavily involved, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to continue with that team because I had school, and it was too distracting, and so I wasn't able to continue going to practice and training. I loved him, but I wasn't able to be a part of the team,
Mm-hmm.
so I withdrew from that. And later on, I joined another team. Excuse me, Sarah and George, or Sarah and Jorge. They're both the directors of Alma Latina, back then, an older group. So when I joined that group, I fell in love with bachata. I already knew I loved it growing up. I would also always listen to bachata and salsa and so many different varieties of Latin music. But this was the first time that I was enthralled with bachata and realized that this is what I really, really enjoyed. So around 2016, I think it was 2016 is when I graduated. And I moved to DC for an internship in interpreting. My ex-dance partner, and this is DC is where I also met my ex-dance partner. So we had been dancing together for forever. But this is also where I met Raven at the bachata brunch. And I saw her and I just knew that was my person. And we were going to be together and we were going to be dancing all night long. I just knew it. We took over the floor. You know, it was just like magic. Our chemistry was incredible. And, you know, we would get other people to join us. And after a while, we started to have a huge cypher circle or dance circle on the floor. And, you know, do you remember what year that was? 2017. Yeah, it was 2017. Mm-hmm. So from 2017 is when I met my ex and we started living together. And finally, I believe it was 2018 that we started teaching and traveling. And we just had so many and hosted many events. And I believe we just stopped that last year. So I'm going to try to stop and I'm going to try to condense everything. I'm not sure if you have the time for me, but whew, I'm sweating.
We have all the time.
Yeah. So that's my short, brief spiel. I could keep going, but I rather not. I prefer to get right to the point of the discussion today.
Absolutely. I definitely appreciate the brief histories from both of you. And again, today we really want to get to the heart of the topics. And I was pleased that Ciara and Raven really gave me topics to really hone on and have us discuss, because it is very important for not just myself and the audience, but the rest of the dance community. And the big things that I believe are issues within the community when it does come with collaboration of the deaf community is that the misconceptions. That is one of the points of that three bullet points that I was given, was the misconception of all deaf and hard of hearing people can lip read. Deaf people cannot dance, and deaf people cannot talk. And for myself, knowing people who are a part of that community, I know that's not true. But again, it's not just for me, it's also for the people watching to have a better understanding. So, whoever would love to expound on that, please do.
This is Raven speaking. I'll go ahead. What was the first point again?
The first point was the misconceptions of all deaf and hard of hearing people can lip read.
Oh, okay. Got it. Yes. That is a very big misconception. And I'm so happy that we're able to discuss this tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So, understand, when you think that people are lip reading, they're only catching 25% of what they're getting. So, you are talking and talking and talking, and I'm only catching 25% of that. So, not every word can be seen on the lips. Every word and syllable is not present. Is not present in every utterance. Number two, another large misconception about lip reading is that when you meet a deaf person that can lip read, don't assume that the next deaf person you meet can do the same. I can lip read, but don't assume that they want to lip read, right? It's very, very exhausting. So understand that lip reading only helps hearing people. And it helps, it's the deaf person giving aid to the conversation so that communication can take place. If one's not able to communicate with me, how are we going to communicate? And so it's important not to assume that all deaf people can lip read or that we want to. It's exhausting in many ways, mostly on the eyes. And it's tough to understand everything. And so often the person that assumes that you're lip reading thinks that they don't need to provide interpreters or captions or other services to make the communication accessible for the deaf person. And so, yeah, the misconception that all deaf people can lip read and that it's fine, we don't need anything else or any additional assistance is not true. And it's also not appropriate. What happens if no one can lip read? And what happens if people assume that, or if there's an emergency, what happens if if there's no access to that?
Yes,
And Ciara is saying, right, that's That's great. And I'd also like to add something to that as well. I want to emphasize that for myself, I go ahead and sign. And this is another reason that I'm signing during this interview, is because my best friend, her first language is ASL, American Sign Language. And if I can support her, I will do so. And it's the same for Spanish speakers. If you speak Spanish, I'm going to speak Spanish with you. I'm not going to force my friends to work harder in a second language. And so I choose to match everyone the same way that they choose to match me. Another issue when we go out dancing is that it's dark. We can't see anything. And it's so tough to lip read. I mean, and to force somebody to lip read all night in the dark is not fair.
We're going to go ahead and switch. So the other thing, oh, I lost my train of thought. Where was I? Oh, darn. Where did it go? Right. So in classes, for example, why do we provide interpreters? So during class, we are speaking, right? If there's no interpreter there, then how can a deaf person have access to language, right? Oh, we lost Raven.
Yes,
No.
no, we'll definitely get her back. Right. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, and you're
Perfect.
back. Oh, darn. Still frozen. Better?
It's definitely a
A
lot
little
better
bit
now.
better? Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, so 2 points that those are the 2 points that I wanted to make.
Absolutely.
And
And
Raven agrees 100%. I wanted to say that connected to that, that last thing that you mentioned about, right, if a teacher is speaking,
mhm.
okay, just not to make those generalizations and assumptions about deaf folks, right? Treat each deaf person as a new person that you get to know and you learn from. I want to add that because in the same way, it's very connected to, as I mentioned before about lip reading. Sure, I could get through a conversation myself personally, because I had attended an oral school and I've done speech therapy, and so I use my voice on occasion, especially if there's emergencies or something needs to be done. But I would never want my choosing to speak at any time to give the wrong impression that other deaf folks, that that's what they're going to do to communicate with you. Every deaf person has different levels of hearing ability, and they may choose to turn off their voice just because, right? That is a choice that they make for themselves. So we need to just honor and respect that and us do what we can to meet the person where they are, even within our community, within our dance community, within my deaf community, there are still tons of diversity and so many identities represented. So people who may find out that I'm deaf or they see that I can voice, they may now say from now on they're good to go, right? And then that's what the law they're going to apply to every single event, right? That they see a deaf person. Oh, well, you don't need an interpreter. You can voice for yourself. And so no, 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 please know that no deaf person is like any other one. Throw that thinking out the window and ask what they need.
Absolutely. And it is.
I want, even if I choose to use my voice or whatever, that it's only to help the person who can't sign, right, have access to me, right? So I'm kind of giving you a little help because you're the one struggling, right? Because you don't know sign language. So I'm helping you out by talking a little bit and making it a little bit easier for you. And sometimes once I start using my voice, people no longer see me as a deaf person. So I always have to be so careful about that choice. I don't want people to then say that because I can speak or even say that sentence or this sentence, that automatically it means I don't need an interpreter or that I don't need access. So, for the interview as well, I chose to sign and turn off my voice as well because I really want to put it out there that we need to make that effort to meet people where they are. Oh, it's freezing. Can you see me? Okay, there I am.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. Excellent. All right. Awesome. So to wrap up that point, sorry, I'm going on and on.
It's okay.
Sometimes we meet people and with some groups I may use my voice, some groups I may not. It really depends on the crowd. I don't want to throw people off sometimes, or have them think that they don't have to worry about sign language or about my accessibility. Sometimes we do that to make people comfortable in some ways. And so we pick and choose, right? We're intentional. And I wanted to teach you guys a term called SIMCOM, simultaneous communication. And it basically is to sign and speak at the same time. So instead of choosing one language, trying to do both at the same time, and we're losing some connection issues.
Yeah.
Little frozen. Oh, frozen and modeling. That's good. All right.
Yes. I mean, and again, like with these conversations, and as free flowing as it is, we do arise and sometimes have these technical difficulties. But I want to also let the audience know is that when I am having this discussion with you all, I'm also watching the sign as it happens, because as a person who does not know sign language, I want to learn. I'm choosing to understand it. And it's by even the every time someone is speaking, I'm looking directly at the hands and understanding, because in the future, when I do come across people like Raven, people like Ciara, and also others in the deaf community that are in the dance community, I just want them to understand that I appreciate them and their presence, but I also am open to learning sign.
That's great. I love that. I wanted to, yeah, absolutely. We will. Gallaudet University offers courses. We have lots of things online resources that are for free that we can share and send with you, and you can share with your folks and all your the people that follow you, and we can definitely share those resources for sure. I think Ciara wanted to say something.
Mhm.
I have two things that I want to add to what Raven said. It's very important that when you're learning sign language that you learn it from a native user. So it's a high recommendation, not someone who might have learned it later on in life and then are now teaching it, or maybe are not so competent in the language, but then you wouldn't have any way of knowing. So I think it's best to go to the source
Mhm.
and make sure you find somebody who's a native user to be your teacher and introduce you to the culture and introduce you to the language. And then the second thing I wanted to say, I need a notepad. Oh, Raven said something. Hold on. Something. No, Raven said, say it again one more time. Oh, yes. Yes. Thank you, Raven, for that point. That's very important. Some people like to make this joke about only learning the bad signs or the curse signs or the bad words. People think this is very funny. It is not to deaf people. It makes a gimmick out of a language. And so we just want to add that. And also, I'll give an example, Ciara. If somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh, I know my ABCs, I know my alphabet," and so they go ahead and proceed to do it for you. Raven's laughing because she may have experienced that before. And so I'm not trying to offend anybody who learns the alphabet and is excited about it. I say go, that's wonderful. But they may think that means language. And just because you know the alphabet doesn't mean you understand the culture, doesn't mean you've really internalized all the beautiful norms of the culture. And so we have to understand that it's an actual language with a structure, and it deserves to be respected. And I think it's very similar to Spanish, right? To spoken language. If I met
Mhm.
somebody who Spanish was their first language or the language that they spoke, and I think of myself as if I come from another country and I'm new to town. Oh, when I was younger and my family moved to a new city, I was about 9, I remember. One of my teachers came up to me and she wanted to practice. She knew a few words in Spanish. And so she said, yo soy, so she was trying to impress me with her 3 words, and that didn't feel welcoming. It didn't feel loving in any kind of way. And me as a 9-year-old, I could recognize at that point what she was trying to do to me. And so that doesn't sound like somebody who's interested in the culture. So if you really want to know the language, if that is something that matters to you, you really have to wholeheartedly embrace it. And if you are, you can tell that deaf person, I'm learning my ABCs. I know I don't know everything. I'm really in the beginning of my journey. I saw a deaf person. I really wanted to practice and walk in that way, humbly. I think Raven wants to add to that. She's frozen. Okay. Technology.
I
Okay.
see her.
Okay. We're going to try again. All right. Let's see. The second misunderstanding, Diamond, that I told you about, the first one was the lip reading, and then the second one, what was it?
The second one was the lip reading, and the other one was about how the misconception of deaf people cannot dance and they can't talk.
Yeah, they can't talk. So poetry. Oh, okay. I knew there was one that we hadn't yet touched on. So, as I mentioned before, I dance a lot, and people will say, I just saw you dancing. How can you be? I can't accept this identity, right? You cannot be a deaf person. I don't even know what to respond to them. Sometimes I'm like, I'm deaf and I'm a dancer. I don't. So I impressed you somehow. I'm not sure why. I said music and dancing yes, are very connected, but a person that cannot hear doesn't. You can't assume that they cannot follow dance, right? That they can't feel dance from inside. They feel the vibration in the room. They have a variety of a varied amount of hearing that they have, and so they're able to access the music in different ways. Okay, I think she's trying to say that for myself. I listen to a song many times, and I find the dance that best suits that kind of music. So if you ever do see somebody who is deaf, who is a dancer, and they might have you might find deaf people who have like headphones in their ears, right? You to say to somebody to question their identity based on what you're looking at is not the right approach, right? They have their reasons why they're using that, and that really isn't any of your business, right? They may be feeling the vibration in the room. They may be there may be so many other ways that they're accessing the music, and they have every right to access it however they want to without being questioned if they how deaf they are. And so yeah, there's just an infinite amount of deaf dancers all over the world, and I know so many of them. So it's yeah, for sure. Never believe the lie that deaf people don't dance. Yeah, and I'm not going to carry around a sign that says I'm deaf so everybody can learn and know, and prove to them that a deaf person can dance. No, but if we get to know each other on the dance floor or anything, I'll be there, and you know, we'll learn from each other that way. Mm, Deaf people can do anything they want. Not being able to hear is not a barrier to dance at all. Many deaf people sing, many deaf people do other arts. And so, yeah, it's just about your perspective on how you're looking at their deafness. And I
Yes.
think Ciara wanted to add something. I wanted to clarify something. My perspective as far as
So I really wanted to clarify something. From my perspective, it's very, or the interpreter perspective, It's very important to know that I am not deaf. I do not have the deaf experience. Let's be very clear about that. My approach, my effort, the actions that I'm taking is because of the things that I've learned on my journey. It's very important that we have this type of discussion and that we ask what type of accommodations people want. And that we also include Raven and ask what she wants and what her preferences are. Raven, do you have anything to add? No, keep going. Okay. So this January, my partner, my previous partner, my ex, we both taught a class. And we got there and we did not know Raven was coming. So, oh, excuse me, sorry. We knew Raven was going to be there. But she had never been there before, or something happened. I couldn't remember, but we had invited her to come with us. And upon arrival, I decided to sign the entire class, the whole time. And so when my partner taught the class, I interpreted or I signed. And again, before I even put my hands up, I checked in with Raven to see how she felt about it. I don't want to out her in any way or spotlight her or anything without her approval. I wanted her to make the decision and to let me know. So the reason I mentioned this is that if we talk about accessibility, this does lead to other topics and how to provide interpreters, how to provide accessibility, what to do, how to present it. And how to meet the person's request. So we don't want to just throw something out there, right? We want to make sure to check in with the community and check in for their needs.
Yes, I definitely appreciate that because a lot of people who are in our dance community who aren't deaf, they just lack the knowledge a lot of times. And unfortunately, what happens is the microaggressions of the comments, of the looks that, everyone does see it. And then having both of you speak about your stories of at places like Buckshot the Brunch, at different workshops, with Ciara acknowledging Raven, but asking her beforehand how she would like to accept it, whether she would do sign or through voice, is really commending and it's really respectful. Because, like you said, you do not want to put that person in a position of possibly outing them and making other people focus on them when they just want to be a part of what everybody else is doing. And I love that. And that really kind of goes now into the next topic of how did both of you decide to collaborate in efforts to make the dance community more accessible to the deaf and hard of hearing?
If you don't mind, I'd like to answer.
Absolutely.
This is Ciara speaking. Okay, so this right here, this action, this effort that we have taken together has been very different. We use different platforms like Instagram or Facebook, and different ways that we reach out and connect with communities, like Congress and other events. However, I do know that when I go to these events, I want to invite my best friend with me. I want her to come in and see what's happening, but I don't want her to show up lost. She never requests an interpreter, though. She always asks me to interpret at the time. Oh, we're checking if Raven can see. It seems like she's frozen.
Yeah, she's frozen.
And interpreter wanted to clarify that Ciara, I have a platform that I want to invite Raven onto, and she hasn't been able to have complete access there. So I, as a dancer, and also an interpreter, and I want to figure out how I can operate the event and how I can make sure that everyone's doing their job, that everything is going smoothly, and at the same time provide access. So before, I don't mind interpreting. I will do it anytime for my best friend. I want to be sure that everyone there has complete access. I will allow somebody to teach, and I will take over the interpreting to ensure that access is provided. And yeah, that is my number one concern, period. But I'm trying to encourage Raven to come on, come with me, get on the boat with me, okay? And so in that struggle, that is where we decided to link up and aggressively pursue educating people, figuring out how we can get the dance community to provide access for deaf and hard of hearing community, period. I have a platform, I have the resources, I already know people that are hosting events. So if I'm invited, I can invite people, deaf people, hard of hearing people, I can invite the community. But if I invite that community, I want to ensure that they have the necessary accommodations. I don't want them to show up and everything goes awry. And so that's where we kind of had to really get together and figure out what to do. So again, my perspective and my approach is that of an interpreter as well as a teacher. So go ahead, Raven, let us know your thoughts. You're right. You're right. You did twist my arm, but in a good way. Because growing up, dancing, it's very hearing centric. It wasn't until I went to college that okay, so it wasn't until sorry, interpreters just clarifying the communication due to the technical difficulties. Oh, we're frozen again. Oh, we're frozen again.
Yeah.
So Ciara's asking if she can try connecting through her phone or Zoom because everything is freezing and it's very tough to see Raven at the moment. Okay. So I believe Raven's going to try to reconnect through her
Okay,
phone.
absolutely, absolutely.
So she's asking, can we see her? And it's a little bit blurry.
Hold on 1 second. I believe, yes, this right here is, let's see. I think that's way better.
Okay, we're good. So we're just doing a visual check. Okay, so now that you can see me, so as I was saying, that I grew up dancing in a very hearing-centric community. It wasn't until I went to Gallaudet University, a deaf college, that I was involved with the deaf team. So in my mind, I just wanted to join because I had a passion for dancing, and that was it. I didn't want to worry about talking with people or conversation. It was all about dance. And so honestly, I never really considered requesting an interpreter for this kind of event. I didn't feel like it matched. And so in the same thing with the dance community here in the DC, Virginia, Maryland area, I realized that, I want to bring my deaf friends. They're my friends. And just because I can tolerate not having obvious access provided doesn't mean that my friends can. And so if I wanted to advocate for my friends, I should be advocating for myself too. And so that's when I began to get more involved with Congress and join teams and seeing interpreters there and starting to advertise the access so that the deaf and hard of hearing community could know that there would be access provided at these events. And so I feel like we both agreed that this was something that needed to take place, that needed to happen. We're doing another tech check. What's she saying? Uh-oh. Okay, so we're checking. I guess we are frozen on our end. Oh, she's back. Okay, I think we're here.
Okay. Hold on one.
Okay, interpreter's going to switch now.
Okay, nice. Technology is something we love and
Yes.
also something we hate at the same time, right? It's a beautiful thing. Okay. All right. You see that's okay? All right. So Ciara wanted to add something. Raven, I want to know if you're comfortable talking a little bit about how Black and Indigenous people of color, in general, how much work they consistently have to do educating, right? And the amount of exhaustion that goes into that community education. Maybe you could share a little bit of the feelings around that. Okay, Raven's asking Ciara to repeat the question. Ciara saying, if you don't mind, if you're comfortable with sharing a little bit about how yourself as a Black Indigenous person of color, Can you talk about the exhaustion that makes it difficult to continue with the community education? Maybe your experience as a deaf person being asked to be the authority on all these million things, and how that might contribute, how that burden, right? How you carry that, and how does that, how if in any way that limits you from the work that you do and what you put out there. Yes, there is a part of me that feels like I want to, I do want access, right? I always want access. But from being deaf, I've experienced depression for so many years. You see, sometimes in the dance community, that some people, they are okay with me being deaf, right? They don't have a problem with my identity until I ask for something, right? Once I ask for an interpreter or I ask for something or I need access, now I'm a deaf person asking for something, then their frame of mind changes or their reaction to me changes. It's almost like this big attitude change that comes when I ask. And sometimes it's financially related. It may mean more work for them, more work involved, and what they need to do research on their own to find the right interpreters or how to make access work. But that's definitely a big attitude change. And some people will just flat out deny it, right? They'll deny that request when I ask for that accommodation. And I'm going because I love dance, right? It's my passion. I love doing it. So to accept that attitude is it hurts. It steals my joy of dance. And to feel that way and to experience that, and I don't want to apologize for being a deaf woman, for being a Black woman. I don't want to apologize. I don't want to feel like anyone's burden. If you want to talk about collaborating and unity and how we're all the same world and we're all together supporting each other, then this is how we can do it, right? It's really about everyone, right? If we're leaving people out, then how can that be? How can we all be part of that same community? How can you say no to people who want to come and dance and want to feel included? Accessibility is really that missing piece, right? It's the thing that's keeping us from being fully part of our community. And a lot of times I'll have that information ready, right? I may tell them, hey, talk to this person. And so here I am doing the work of making it easier for them to get that interpreter. And even still, I may face some resistance. Yes. Okay. All right. You mentioned something. Sometimes I will ask for captioning added to videos. And I see that organizers will add Spanish captioning, or if that's the community that they're targeting or they're concerned about. And so, why is adding captioning for something for me such a big ask, right? Why is that outside of what we usually do? What would be normal for us to ask for? I've asked for interpreters for different events. Darn it. Yeah, I just texted Raven to tell her that she's frozen, but I'm sure she's probably knows. I can So definitely Raven and I have had this conversation. We brainstorm all the time about how we can get the dance community on board, how we can explain how important access is, and what really welcoming is, right? What is inclusion? When we say something like, "Oh, do you mind adding captioning to your videos?" Or if you have a promotional post on Facebook, why not just go ahead and add the caption or add that there'll be an ASL interpreter? Um, And it's really a very simple ask, right? It doesn't feel like it's asking too much. And it's our space, right? It's people that we work with often, people that we're comfortable with. I just recently did an event the past January here in DC. It was called Amargue Fusion, and it was a weekender. And of course, for me, because I am an interpreter and I have all these contacts, right? Of course, I had an advantage. Still, I'm also a teacher, right? So as a teacher, I care about the students and the people that are reaching out to me and want to be involved. So the dance community in general now, as you're listening to this conversation, that you can also have an interpreter for your events as well, right? If I was able to make it happen, then you're able to make it happen as well. Welcome back, Raven. Oh, I'm on my laptop again. Let's hope it works. So I'll just summarize really fast about what we were just saying, how we've been trying to make things more accessible and having interpreters at more events so that we're modeling for other folks what that's supposed to look like. That was kind of the summary that I gave. But Raven, if there was anything that you didn't get a chance to say, did you mention about the flyers? You did say, and adding captioning to the videos. Also, providing something that says, if you would like an interpreter, please contact this number or that email, right? So that people know that that's even an option. That's something that you can definitely do. Do you want to add anything to that, Raven? Thank you to Ciara so much for adding that during my technical problems. Many people have reached out to me asking how do I include more deaf folks in my events. I appreciate, Ciara, you explaining that. So that deaf people know that they can go to these events. Now, think about your flyers, right? If a deaf person is scrolling through Facebook or social media and they're interested in joining an event because it's a dance event, because of the presenters or whomever's going to be there, they need to know who they can contact for accommodations, right? If they could just get that piece of information. Or if there's a video there, right? But there's no captions on the video, then that's not something I'm really going to stop and look at because it's just another thing that's inaccessible to me. So I ask people to add captions as provide access from the get-go, right? Access first. If I have that ability, have access to that information, then I want to know more about it. I want to be more involved. I feel connected to it. For events, for example, promotional things like flyers or congresses that we might go to, I want to know when you're thinking about your budget and you're organizing the event, are you budgeting for access, right? This is something you can think about when you're in the process of organizing. Having a budget set aside to ensure that everyone in the community has a way to participate fully in the event. And thinking about that first before you even get a request from a deaf person. It's the kind of thinking that really shows equity. It shows a point of view that shows that you care about everyone in the community. Instead of being last minute searching for folks who might be available, not available, and then you might not get the best suited person for that job. And so these are just ways, preventative ways to put access first. I think is a better approach to be prepared.
Absolutely. And actually, both of these statements from Raven and Ciara kind of knocked out the next two questions I had about promotional material more accessible, but also requesting an interpreter. So for me, I definitely want to take this chance. Instead of doing the highlighting of the question on the screen, because it can definitely interfere with the sign, I'd actually like to just ask two of the questions that were presented to me. The first question was by Edwin Ferreras, and he asks, Raven, which events do you feel have best captured your interests as far as inclusivity and accessibility for you as a dancer? And then after that question, I'll then proceed to ask the next one.
Ciara has a hint. Okay, I'm going to repeat the question. So Edwin wants to know which event that happened recently or Have you felt really your needs? Okay, so there were two experiences that I had. The first one happened in November,
Mm-hmm.
and that was called Masters of Bachata, the takeover. And that was a cat event that she hosted, a congress that happened in Virginia Beach. And that was in November. That was my first time going to a congress where I had
Mm.
interpreters. It was a fabulous experience. It was really amazing. Oh, Frozen.
That was my first time having access within a dance congress and an event where I was actually able to see an interpreter, and that was really nice. It was a really nice experience to have that.
Okay. Right, and then the other deaf people came to who have been to that master's event, that congress. They came up to me and they were just shocked that they're to see other deaf people here and that there was an interpreter. It was really such an important moment for me. I remember that happened this past November, and people were just so excited about it. It was a great experience for me, and to have interpreters that weekend just really meant a lot. And on my team as well, right? Because we were performing, and just to have a full experience. We did a bachata performance there, so it was a beautiful experience for me. And then the second thing I have to mention, of course, was Amarga Fusion in January. Did I get that spelling right? Amarga Fusion. Yes, I did it right. Okay. All right. Amarga Fusion Weekender was this past January. It was an amazing experience. It was run by Ciara and by Ace, and it was wonderful. Um, there was a great. The dance teachers were amazing. There were many wonderful people that came. The interpreting team was amazing too. We had a great panel on the last day, and that panel really drove home the mission, right? The philosophy behind inclusion in dance. And it was also the first place where I could share my thoughts and my feelings as a deaf dancer. So that was really the first time somebody had turned the mic over to me for me to share what it was like for me to be in a dance space and how to make that inclusive. I think that conversation started a lot of this. That was like a really big step in this journey in what we're talking about now, in bringing awareness to about accessibility to the dance community.
Yes, and I really appreciate two of those organizations, and the Masters of Bachata, and also Amarga Fusion. I've heard about them myself, but to know that they had the accessibility in mind is really amazing, and much love and respect to those events. And the second question is actually for Ciara. This comes from History
Oh, and
Varn.
can I add something?
Yes.
For the bachata, I want to mention bachata brunch because Sal provides in the interpreters for the classes, and I really want to say a lot of love for Sal. He's always there for us, and we love him dearly. So bachata brunch is great because of him. We've also gotten interpreters for that event.
Oh, that's amazing. So yes, so Masters of Bachata, Amalga Fusion, and Bachata Brunch, which is an event I will surely go to in the future. Um,
Oh, you have to. You cannot miss it. It
yeah,
is required. Required.
yes. As a videographer, I have to go. I would love to film all of your amazing dances.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I
you
think.
know,
Okay. Sorry, I thought Ciara was going to add something.
oh no worries,
Okay.
no worries. And the second question is actually for Ciara by History Varner, and they ask, Ciara, could you share tips on how you, as an instructor and organizer, approach making your events accessible? I believe you did touch on that, but kind of giving a little more clarity. And how would you suggest other dance companies to get started in becoming accessible for the deaf community?
Right. I always think of accessibility first, right? So that's my framework. That's where I start. I have to know what interpreters are available and when, right? I start from there. I contact the interpreters that I know, and then once I've chosen them, I ask them for their availability. I make sure that I book them for that weekend or whatever dates it is, and then I have to make sure I have the budget for it. And so that means that if I have to pay for them myself, then I will, because I'm at that point, and there's no way I'm going to host an event that's going to be inaccessible to somebody that I care about. So, in general, for the community who's thinking about making accessibility important for them, I would say look at your budgets when you're putting it together in the very beginning. Make sure that you have that money put aside for paying interpreters. That's really ultimately what you have to think of first. And the interpreters are like right now, for example, are working nonstop, right? They're continuously. We have to think of them as well. We have to pay the teachers. We have to pay everyone that's an important person in the room, right? And that's everyone. So if you think about an event that you pay $70, $80, $90 for, right? And you think about how many people go to those events, then accessibility doesn't seem so out of reach, right? We can start with that first, the budgeting and the organizing. And then once that money is put aside, then you can start after you've booked your interpreters and you've booked your place and you've booked your food and everything else that you want to do. Then, just always with that frame that accessibility is not going to be an afterthought. And then you can start with doing your own research, reaching out to people like myself and people who are in the community who might know about it that can guide you. I'm already a teacher, but I'm also an interpreter. So I have many resources, right? You can reach out to me and I'm going to be able to share the names and the contact information of any interpreters. And I can always connect you with somebody who can guide you through the process as well. That's really the first step. I can think of one person, Jessica Taylor, for example. She's from Pittsburgh. And she did her own research, right? She contacted me maybe once and then did all the rest of the work on her own, right? She found an agency that was in her area. She found interpreters who were an agency that was willing to offer interpreters. She did it all, right? She used her social media. She used what she needed, her resources, and this year she was supposed to host an event, and unfortunately because of the pandemic we weren't able to host it the same way. But yeah, she had the interpreters. She knew what she needed to do. Just doing that research herself, she was able to find it. So she's a good example of somebody who models that.
Absolutely. Right now, I don't know if I am lagging on
I
here.
actually have something to add.
Yes.
Diamond, can you see us?
Yes. No, for some reason, I'm not able to see you. Right now, it has me lagging. Are you guys there?
So we can see you, but you're frozen. Oh, I see you now. Can you see us?
Okay.
Oh,
Yes,
the interpreter disappeared.
I did. Yes. I think I am lagging Yeah, I'm good. I'm good to go. Wait, hold on one second. Bam.
Back.
We're good.
We're good to go. We're all trying to figure this out together.
Absolutely. Again, people, this is organic, and the lags and things happen. So I mean, I'm just great. I'm gracious that we still can be here. And again, I really love all of the information that I am learning, because this is information I can disseminate to organizers and promoters in New York City as well. So I definitely appreciate it. And that kind of brings me to the next question that I have, or the next topic to discuss would be.
Actually, before you go on to the next
Yes.
topic, I'd like to add something. This is in relation to the interpreters. I believe we mentioned it before, but I want to reiterate this. When you're planning an event, it would be really nice for you guys to let the interpreters know about 2 weeks in advance. Start looking for them before everything happens so that we'll be able to set everything up smoothly. You don't want to wait 2 or 3 days before the event and then scramble to try to find someone. Start taking care of that 2 weeks before so that everything can work seamlessly. And Ciara, I want to add something as well. We've already streamed this interview, this interview, and people have already contacted me. I have tons of friends that are interpreters. I would prefer that when you want to hire interpreters for your events, go through direct hire. It might be more affordable for you. You could go through an agency, but I know people directly. And if you hire interpreters directly, you're also able to negotiate the price. And it's a lot easier for the host and the coordinator to work directly with an interpreter than it is for them to work with the agency. Sometimes the agency is a roundabout way to find an interpreter, but if you're able to work with one directly, it takes care of that middleman. And it's the same. You don't want to have to teach and educate. You want things to kind of be directed. And I just want to be very, very clear. When I hire interpreters, hire Black or Indigenous interpreters of color, period. Because we're noticing that people are very, very marginalized. And that happens in every community, but specifically Black and Indigenous people of color. So I just want to put that one out there. Okay? Catch that. And mic drop right there.
I am truly loving the honesty and the straight up approach about how we do need to reevaluate our priorities, especially when we have our dance scene that is so diverse, but it kind of excludes a lot of the people within it. So I think that is really important to understand. And for me, another topic I'd really love to hit on is about the do's and don'ts, about the interactions you have with deaf and hard of hearing, because I believe this topic specifically is very important because you have people who are watching this discussion that when we eventually get back into dancing, it can help them have a lot more knowledge and know how to approach a person who is of that community in a more respectful way. So whoever would love to explain that, the floor is yours.
Well, it would have to be from the deaf perspective and not mine. So take it away, Raven. So I'm not sure if you had any other questions before that, or...
Actually, no, it was the how to request an interpreter if there's a request. The next one was the do's and don'ts of interacting with deaf and hard of hearing, not outing a person.
All right. Well, let's get into this one. Okay. So the Latino community in general, I have noticed how people lead when you're on the dance floor or leading and making requests on and off of the dance floor. So in relation to this, I have noticed that people come up to me and they want to lead me out to dance. A big don't, and this is my personal experience. So again, this is a don't for me. But when you find out a person is deaf, do not, please don't out them as a deaf person. And then bring a line of people to dance with the deaf person. Don't do that. Don't blast it to the whole floor. Did you know that they're a deaf person? Did you know? Did you see how good they are? They're so good for a deaf person. Please don't do that. We are not here for your entertainment. And if you do that to me, I will look at you like you're crazy. So just know that. Second, If a person tells you they're deaf, don't tell them they're lying. Don't tell them that they're making up stories or doing something for attention. They're not. You see them signing, and they told you they're deaf. So what is so shocking? What what is the mind fuck of the entire situation? You see me dancing. I'm deaf, and it can happen. Clearly. So don't cover your mouth and try to have them guess if they can understand you to prove that they're deaf in some way. That is very offensive. Don't do that. It's not appropriate. Also, don't make up signs and pretend that you know sign language or that you're a mock interpreter. Don't do that. We see you. Ciara, that random gesturing, yeah, don't do it. Ooh, it's cringeworthy. Cringeworthy. Don't do that. We are just there to have fun. Don't make our deafness a big deal. If you're encountering a deaf person on the floor, allow them to lead. That's fine. It's a dance space, but it's not the appropriate place to talk about one's deafness or their identity. They're there to dance. But if they want to disclose their deafness or if they want to have that conversation, allow the deaf person to lead, period. So those were my don'ts. Now on to my list of do's. Do ask a deaf person to dance with you. And dance your ass off. Have a wonderful time. Okay? That's what we're there to do. Yeah. And I'm trying to think of another one, but I think that's it.
Okay. I mean, does Ciara have anything to add on that?
No. Oh, you know what? I do. I have one more thing to add. One more. So me and Ciara, we've known each other. People have seen us speaking or signing together. And so, of course, I'm with my best friend. We're signing. And people will look at us and then grab our hands to take us to the dance floor. And excuse me, they would grab Ciara's hand and pull her away onto the dance floor. And don't do that. Don't do that. Don't interrupt a conversation. We're literally in the middle of talking. And then you come and take their hands away and pull them onto the dance floor. That's very disruptive. And Ciara, first of all, I just want to clarify, don't grab anybody, period.
Yes, do not.
Right. But especially if we're having a conversation, just relax and wait. Wait your turn. It's very simple. Yeah, I feel like people don't really understand the respect factor that we are literally in the middle of a conversation. We're not on the dance floor. And you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what we are talking about. And you seem to not care coming in and disrupting the whole conversation. So if you would like to interrupt or you would like to ask somebody to dance, simply ask them, would you mind going for a dance? Would you like to dance now? And allow the person to decide if they will or will not join you. And Ciara is showing this simple gesture of a hand out and a smile. That's more than enough. If a person, it doesn't matter if the person is deaf or not, anybody could understand that gesture. And Raven is saying, yeah, that's a great gesture. And also you don't have to be paranoid. You don't have to, oh my God, there's a deaf person and I don't know how to approach them. No, relax, just calm down. Um, Hearing people or people that do not sign really just get really up in arms about interacting with deaf people. Breathe. It's okay. It's okay. I promise you, it's okay. Yeah, and Ciara is saying, calm down, maybe take a deep breath, do some counting 1, 2, 3 before you go in. Raven speaking. I have some friends in my area, and they do ask me to go out and dance with them. And so I have taught them a few things, I've taught them a few signs of how to ask me to dance with them. Just general things. You don't have to know ASL, or everyone doesn't have to know ASL to dance on stage or on the floor. But it is part of the Latino culture. If you would like to introduce or invite somebody to dance with you, just lean in and place out a hand. And so it really is that simple. It's a simple gesture to invite somebody to dance with you and nothing more.
Yes, that with the do's and don'ts makes perfect sense, and I do hope the audience as well adheres to that and understand what to do and what not to do on the dance floor, because that information.
And if you don't, I'm gonna look at you like you're crazy. I just want you to know right now you've been informed.
Absolutely,
Right?
and
That's it. You know now. There's no going back.
yes, and that kind of now we can go into the next topic, which is I seen a question from Jessica Taylor, but it also ties into the next topic, which is the emergency funds for accommodations. But Jessica actually asks, can you give an estimate of how much per hour organizers should be planning in their budgets?
Okay. So I believe Sarah's gonna answer this one. I know that's me. Yeah. Raven said, go on, girl. You got this. Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. So it varies, of course. It depends on the interpreter. It depends on the state. It does vary from state to state what interpreters will charge. The first thing to do is ask the interpreter what their rate is. So that's the appropriate way to start that conversation. Ask them what their rate is. And then also how many hours your event will be. So if you're having a full weekender, right, versus having a workshop that's only 2 or 3 hours. Sometimes you can agree one established rate, let's say like a flat rate for the weekend. That's something that you can do instead of going by hour, or you can pay them by hour. It really depends. And the same as we do with the teachers, we always ask them what their rate is first and what they would prefer to charge, and then we have a conversation about it. And does it include food? Does it include travel? What is included in that part of it? So just like we would do with teachers, we kind of have that conversation with interpreters. So for example, it depends on where you live. In DC, it might be more expensive because it is an area that you earn more, maybe versus Boston or versus another city or another place where the cost of living might be different. And so it varies based on that. I think Raven wants to add something. Ciara said you have that conversation with the interpreter, and the interpreters are very flexible, right? They want to make dance accessible. They're happy to do a trade of sorts, right? Maybe you can trade them for a pass, trade them for a hotel stay. They may want to work with a specific person, bring along their team. There's just many conversations that can be had about rates. You have that conversation, and also bringing up the emergency fund. I think that's super important. And Ciara wants to say something about that. To add on to that, and their interpreters should not be asked to do that for free. Oh, don't assume interpreters will do that for free. Thank you. I just wanted you to repeat that. Don't assume that interpreters will work for free. It's very important that you ask, right? Just start from there, that you value their work. And if you can't afford them, then it is possible you could offer food, right? You could offer stay. You could offer other things instead. Gas money. There's just so many options that you could negotiate. And the interpreters are very flexible about that. They're open to negotiating. And so I think that's important to have that conversation. And once that's locked and you've made that agreement about the rates, then you go from there. And that's the same with the instructors, right? How you approach instructors, use that same logic to approach interpreters because they're professionals, right?
All right. Yeah. I mean, that is definitely important because when we're talking about having these events and having accommodations, we need to focus on creating a budget for that because a lot of times, even with Raven's experience of going to events and these organizers not even having in their mind the thought of having an accessibility for them. And I think with having this conversation, it opens the door and it should also give these organizers and promoters the thought that when we do come back to dancing, to automatically have those features available, whether it be in person, also online. And that really kind of now brings up the next topic of dealing with Raven to further explain the experience as a deaf dancer in the community. Because I know throughout this discussion, we've talked about it, but kind of giving an overall view from the starting of your dance journey to present day.
And what was the specific question?
Basically, just your experience as a deaf dancer in the community. It can seem as a broad question, but a question that can go in many different ways, I guess.
I love dancing. And I feel like music is such a connector, dancing is such a connector. I understand music on so many levels. It's something that's it tunes everything else out for me, right? When I think about dancing, when I'm connected to vibration in the room. Is it just me?
Yes.
Okay, and we're back. Yes, you see me?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
Okay. All right, perfect. Okay, good. Oh, now Raven's frozen. Just a little bit.
It's a little bit better now. Yes.
Okay, go ahead. All right, go. Okay, so dance means so much to me. I enjoy the feeling of the vibration, of closing my eyes and getting lost in the dance, of letting the music work through my body, feeling the vibration, how it feels to move my body. It's just an amazing feeling. And even difficult to explain what it really does for me. And so there's just so many things that I love about dance. And then growing up, really, that was a language for me, a way to express. I the majority of people are hearing and it is very difficult to communicate, right? Or having access to spaces. Not everyone signs American Sign Language, ASL. And so when I'm dancing, it's almost like this connector that I have. It's a way that I can express myself. And when I see other people dancing, it's almost like I understand them better, right? I'm understanding them. I know what they're trying to tell me. It's so beautiful how they're expressing themselves in dance. So I feel like it's this universal language. That is how I feel about dance, Latino dancing, bachata. It's so intimate. The connection is so beautiful, and it really leads me as a deaf dancer. I want to understand the relationship with my partner, right? My partner work is so important to me. I want us to communicate in what we're doing and in our dancing. I want our communication to be open. And so all that whole process for me is incredibly important. And that's why I love it. That's why it means so much to me. When I think about my struggles with communication, or the times in my life when I've felt left out or a barrier because of having a disability, I'm most of all deaf. Proud of my deafness, right? My identities are things that make me. I have no desire to become a person who can hear. I am perfectly fine and accept myself 100%. And I know many people don't understand that, right? It's a difficult concept for people. They think that being hearing or a person that can hear might be the ideal. And for me, I don't feel that way. For me, it's about my connection with people. I want to be able to share my story the way that I'm doing here, express myself through dance, and I feel like that really is the universal language. I graduated in my major, my undergrad and my master's is in social work. And so my dream would be one day is to host a dance youth camp. Um, I would love to. That would really be my. I'm a clinical social worker. I'm working on my license, and I want to work with at-risk youth. Right. I think those are the people who really could benefit the most from learning how to express themselves through dance and communicate with each other in that way. I think dancing would be very healing for them, and it would be a way for them to express who they are and connect if they themselves are deaf and they want to connect with the hearing world. It's a great way without having to use their voice, right? Dance is that thing that we don't have to use our voice to communicate. So when we dance, it's the way that poetry is music, right? In the same way. So the way an artist would do a painting, when we are dancing, we are also creating art. And we're telling our story through our dance, through the way that we're expressing ourselves. And so I want to continue to move that forward and work with at-risk youth that can benefit from that as well. And regardless of whether they are deaf or hearing or have another disability, I know that everyone can benefit from learning about dance and expressing themselves through dance and growing into who they are and developing and finding their identity and in their journey, finding their place. Um, I don't let barriers stop me, and I want to model that for other folks that have disabilities as well. And if I have to keep on repeating myself over and over and over again, even though people are getting on my nerves, I'm still going to keep on fighting for access. I'm still going to fight for the disability community. I'm going to be here, and I'll continue to fight for as long as I can for my community, for everyone, and continue to do things that I love, like including dance. And so I'm happy to be able to be a model in some way for that community, right? As a deaf person who loves dance. I would never, the idea of dance being taken away from me in any kind of way, I can't imagine that. And I love putting those worlds together, connecting the deaf world and the dance world.
Oh, I'm honored, and just to have a person like yourself that sees more with dancing than just being at a social, and that you realize how much dance has impacted your life for the better, and you want to give that same love and appreciation to people in your community, because as we all know in our dance community, the dances that we have just kind of take us away into like another world, and it gives us a sense of relief, a sense of belonging. And I'm really just thankful to hear your experience and your interpretation and what you want to do going forward. And going now to, I think, the final two topics. This is going for Ciara, and this is mainly on what is the importance of maintaining your role as an interpreter versus being an instructor using one language?
We're gonna switch into.
All right. I want to make sure that this is very simple for everyone. If I'm interpreting and my role is to interpret, that's what that's going to be at that time. If I'm teaching, my role will be teaching at that time. I know Raven mentioned SimCom or simultaneous communication at the beginning of this interview. I feel like it's important for myself to honor both roles and to honor the code of professional conduct for interpreters. Let me clarify what that is. Interpreters have a specific policy that we are supposed to follow. That is the foundation of our profession. And so, in general, if I'm working the entire time. If my job is to provide access, that is what I'm doing. I'm not going to be hopping between teaching as well as providing access. It just doesn't make sense. However, most importantly, if I'm teaching, I don't want to distract the students like, oh my gosh, you're signing, sign like it's no, that's not what we're going to do. It's uncomfortable, and I don't want the language to take away from anyone's experience because it's not fair. So if myself and another student agrees that I can sign during the class, or if that's their preference that I SimCom, then I'll go ahead and do so. And that will be out of respect for their preference and that alone. But it is really important for me to follow the guidelines of an interpreter and to maintain those boundaries and to honor the culture and to respect the community. I don't ever want to become the teacher that knows sign language and that become my identity. No, that's not what I'm here for. That's not my goal. And I'm not doing that. If you see my hands up and I'm signing, the purpose is for access only, never for attention. And this is something that I really try to emphasize. If I'm teaching, do not call me in to interpret. I don't want anything to impact a deaf person's experience in my class. I don't want to all of a sudden kind of take over another role. That's not what I'm going to do, and that's not what I'm here for. So I feel like it's really, if anybody knows signs or knows ASL, for example, if you're learning and you record yourself signing music, there's a few, negative ideas and opinions about that. I'm not sure if you would like to expand a little bit more on that, Raven, but or expand on the deaf experience or the deaf perspective of something like that, where a person is kind of taking on sign language for their own attention. But that's just kind of where I stand as far as having both roles in one place. Raven, do you have anything to add? Yeah, I believe that would be another don't that I would like everyone to know is don't kind of deify somebody that knows sign language and make it a spectacle. It's unnecessary. The interpreter is literally only there for access. There's no need to applaud them and look at them as some sort of savior. No, they're only there to provide access to communication. Also, if myself or another deaf person has an interpreter with them, it's polite, and it's polite to speak directly to the deaf person and not to the interpreter. Try to refrain from using language like tell him or tell her when referring to the deaf person. Try to keep your eye contact on the person that you're speaking with. Because interpreters are simply there to provide access to communication, and that is it. So if you have something to say, you're saying it directly to me. The only reason the interpreter is there is because I might not be able to hear you. And so the interpreter is there to kind of bridge that gap between the communication from your speech to my sight. Sorry, the interpreter lost that last part. Staying on. So again, just clarifying what was missed is that the interpreter is only there to produce the communication. There's no need to use language like tell him or tell her. No, just speak directly to me. Don't include the interpreter in that. Another thing I want to add is don't have conversations with the interpreter the entire time at the detriment of my access. Ciara wants to add, or my favorite, which is ironic, don't interpret this part when people say that. Oh no, interpret everything. They will definitely interpret that part. Exactly. Yeah. That's just another thing related to the list of don'ts that we have. If you start speaking and you don't want if you start speaking or you're saying something, the interpreter is going to interpret that, period. There is no don't say this, don't sign that. Never. Access 100% all the way.
Absolutely. Oh, I didn't know. So yeah, I mean, that is very important. Like you said, even with all of the information that we're given, you're always going to understand the do's and don'ts, understanding that what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And for the people who are understanding the language and understanding how you should approach things, these are the tips and tools, and I think that's very important. The last topic that we're really going to talk about.
I have one more thing to add, if possible. Absolutely. I'm not sure if we want to expand on one topic or another, but I did want to add. Oh, I did want to add that I will provide resources for you guys to be able to obtain an interpreter at the end. So please don't let me forget that, okay?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And at least, you anything else? Okay. No worries. And at least before we get to the end of the topic, I do want to let the audience know is that after this end of the topic and we conclude this interview, I will be bringing along Monica as well, the other interpreter that you've seen throughout the discussion, to again give thanks to everyone that was involved. She is watching it as we speak, but I will add her in. So again, the last topic that I really want to discuss is about providing accommodations when things are done virtually. Because as of right now, a lot of the classes that are happening are still being done virtually at home. And a sub point would be about the statement of no one wants to lip read a whole live video or live class. So at least with this last topic, anyone who kind of wants to take the floor on that is welcome to do so.
Ciara, is it okay if I add something? Okay. So first, it makes it really hard for me because I want to watch. I want to watch. And it's hard for me when I don't have an interpreter available. So it's, yeah, so if it's live on Facebook or something, it's tough for me to watch it without an interpreter. It's kind of awkward. I feel like we should have one provided so that we can share it with people who maybe aren't able to be involved or aren't able to watch because there is no interpreter. So yes, we're talking about the community and oppression and different things related to that, but it's a conflict when we're still oppressing other parts of the community that we stand next to, you know? It doesn't match. It doesn't add up. So, for example, I'm a teacher and I want to advocate and educate, and I want to advertise different information that I have about different events that are going on. But if I know that they're not going to provide an interpreter, I feel conflicted and I don't want to share it with my community because I know that there's not going to be access provided, and my number one goal is to advocate for this community. So that's my approach and my opinion. Raven, if you had anything to add? I agree. Typically for me, I do see a lot of announcements and advertisements that come out very, very late, or I see them at the last minute. And by the time that I make the request or let them know that of my interest, it's too late for them to get an interpreter. And, you know, most of my community is deaf or hard of hearing, and there just is no access for us. So, again, providing access from the beginning is important. If you aren't able to get an interpreter, having an app or something to aid in communication or to aid in access, something would help. Don't just give up and say, no, I'm not able to find an interpreter. And so that's the end of that. No, you might be able to find somebody who's able to volunteer or somebody that can do closed captioning or real-time cart. You might be able to do something, but you don't know unless you ask. So again, if you can't get an interpreter, get captions. But I do want to warn you, YouTube captions are not always the best. YouTube has automatic captioning for videos. But they're not always accurate. So getting an interpreter, somebody to transcribe things, you know, I understand it. It could be a little bit of a burden and time consuming. However, it's not about you. If you have an event and you want to provide dance classes to a large audience, and if you want to talk about inclusion and unity, well, then put in the work. Simple as that. We have to do what we have to do. I don't want to work through this all by myself. And I shouldn't have to. And I also shouldn't have to ask every single time to be included to everything. Hello, I'm here too. It gets monotonous. So now, if you're watching this live, you have no more excuses. Please, you could contact us, but I do wish that you guys would go do your own research. You can no longer claim ignorance. We've already provided the information. So now it's up to you. Will you listen to everything that we've just said and let it fall by the wayside, or will you roll up your sleeves and actually start doing the work? Having an interpreter for a single event is not enough. Once you know that you can have an interpreter for an event, continue to provide an interpreter for the rest of your event, and have that ingrained in your planning all the time. Don't wait for somebody to request or wait till the last minute. We are exhausted with begging for access, so handle it on the front end. I believe you're on mute.
Am I on mute? Can you hear me clearly? Yes. Again, sorry. I just want to reiterate, we're at the 2 hour mark, and this is amazing. This has been such an amazing conversation, being educated, learning more information, having both of you share your stories, but also inform a lot of our organizers and our event holders that there are no more excuses. You do have to put in the work, and you do have to put in the time. And I gladly appreciate to have Ciara, to have Raven, to have Monica, to have Candace here. I appreciate you all so much because, again, a person like myself that is not deaf wants to show that he is aware and wants to advocate and wants to help the scene grow. And I am united with each and every one of you. And at least before we go, I would love to just have each and every one of you just provide some contact information, and we should be good.
Okay, so Raven, your Instagram, Facebook, all of your social media, would you like to provide it? Okay, so my Facebook name is Raven Sutton. You can find me on Instagram at freelove19xx. Also, very soon, I will be posting a video of myself called the How to Create. I'll have more information about that, as well as you'll be able to see a video of me dancing and signing some songs in ASL. So I'm excited to represent. Woo woo. And this is Ciara. My information is on Facebook is my first name, last name, Ciara Morales, simple. My Instagram is a little more complicated, however. It is IAMTT. Oh, I'm sorry. IAM__. My name, CIARAAA. It's a little complicated, but that's me on Instagram. I'd also like to give you my email address. It's already on my pages, so you can find it by going to my Facebook or my Instagram. So yeah. And I'd also like to explain a little bit more about the resources that we have, because there is plenty of resources that we have available to you.
Okay. Candace, you sign for me? So the question about promotions and how to get in touch with the interpreters comes up often in the work that we do, because people always want to support their community members as much as they possibly can. So I just want to highlight two little things about that. The interpreter role carries a lot of power. We're the person in the room that has all the languages. And we are being compensated for the work that we're doing here because we have such amazing advocates for our work. And so that puts us in a little bit of a conundrum in the receiving more promotional profit in any kind of way for our services while also being paid to do something, right? And so every time I'm asked for how can I get in touch with you? What can I know more about what you're doing? I'm always faced with that question. So I just wanted to put that out there that in general, the work is about centering deaf experiences. That is the whole point. I would not be here, Candace would not be here if Raven was not here. It's not the other way around that because we're here, Raven's here. Because Raven's here, we're here, right? And it's the same for Ciara. So I just wanted to say that. And then the second thing is I do a lot of advocacy for access. So I put my email in the chat. It's mo@creandolazos, creandolazos.org. Happy to have any and all conversations about access. The reason why I'm sharing it mostly is so that Raven and Ciara can take a break and you can come and ask me and we can all share the work. That's really why I'm putting it out there. So thank you for the opportunity for being here.
Absolutely. All right. Does Candace want to add anything else before we conclude?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Well, honestly,
you guys have said it all.
yes, again, I thank you so much all for your time, Raven, Ciara, Candace, and Monica. Again, I am an advocate for that, for your community, for all communities. And again, through the conversations we have, I think we are going to help build and solidify that foundation of unity. So this is the first discussion, but it surely won't be the last. I hope to have you all on again. And I would love your services again for Monica and Candace. But thank you all for an amazing discussion. This was an experience. And again, everyone can find their contact information below and also contact them directly. But again, I want to thank you all for attending and listening to this discussion that we had. And I want everyone to stay safe. Have a beautiful night, a beautiful week ahead. And again, let's start the conversations. It's better late than never. And everyone have a blessed evening. Hello. I think we have a lag. Hello? Hello? Are we good? Can you hear me? Hold on.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, sorry. I know I probably tuned out. But again, thank you all. I know we had some technical difficulties throughout everything, but I appreciate everyone. And again, I want everyone to have a beautiful night. Thank you all, ladies, and safe travels and enjoy your week. Bye, everyone.